We're live now, Mark.
Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, officers. Welcome to the council meeting of East Gippsland Shire Council on Tuesday, the 5th of April. This council meeting was scheduled to be at Buchan at 1:30 this afternoon, but the recent rain events and other emergencies have caused us to transfer and move this council meeting to tonight at 6 o'clock at the chamber in the council offices in Bairnsdale. So, ladies and gentlemen, viewers will notice that I'm not present in the chamber tonight. The amendments to the local government regulations for COVID-19 state the definition of present includes attendance online for council members and the chair. But unfortunately, I recently tested positive to COVID and I'm isolating and recovering from that situation. And in addition, councillors and those who are viewing, I may experience unreliable connectivity due to the recent rain events. Therefore, and with a view to practical chairing of this hybrid meeting tonight, I'm suggesting that the Deputy Mayor, who is in the chamber, assume the chair of the meeting tonight. Therefore, councillors, I propose a motion for the Deputy Mayor to chair this meeting tonight. So I need a seconder for that, and I can't see around the table, so I'm already deferring to the Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Stowe and Councillor Van Diggle, so take your choice.
Yeah, terrific. All right, well, so I've moved and Councillor Van Diggle has seconded it. In that case, councillors, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks,
yes,
councillors.
Right, that's unanimous. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Allen. So I'm going to hand over the chair to you, and I'm really grateful for you to do that, and to wish you a smooth meeting tonight, and all the best to the other councillors too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So welcome everyone to the East Gippsland Shire Council's unscheduled meeting of 5th of April 2020. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meeting via webcasting, being youtube.com at East Gippy TV, to enhance the accessibility of its meetings to the broader East Gippsland community. These recordings are also archived and available for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate times during the meeting, any members of the gallery who are addressing the council will have their image, comments or submissions recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. The Victorian Government has amended the COVID-19 Ombudsman Emergency Measures and other Acts Amendments, Act 2020, that enables the council to be conducted by electronic means until the 26th of April 2020. The Minister for Local Government reissued the Ministerial COVID Good Practice Guidelines for virtual meetings on the 20th of October 2020, outlining the provisions relating to the Local Government Act 2020 to allow councillors to attend council meetings electronically, and the requirement where council meetings are open to the public, council meetings are open to the public, will be satisfied where the meeting is live streamed. The amendments do not preclude councillors from attending a meeting in person in the council chambers. Members of the public are invited to view the council meeting live stream by following the link on the council's website or Facebook page. Straight onto that one? Yes. Yeah. A member's attendance can only be recorded as present where the member confirm that they meet all three of the following. They can hear the proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. Councillors must confirm all of the above conditions to be noted as present for the meeting. A quorum will not be made if these conditions are not met, and the meeting will be adjourned until a quorum is met or postponed if a quorum cannot be met. If technical difficulties are encountered by council during the meeting, including with live streaming, we will adjourn until the resolution of the issue or postpone to a later time and or date. I will now confirm with each councillor in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that the location that they are participating from is secure to ensure deliberations are confidential. So I'll start with the Mayor, Councillor Reeves. Can you see and hear us?
Clearly, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Indeed, I can. Thank you.
Councillor Van Diggle, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Deputy Mayor.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can. I do have a greyhound next to me, but they're not going to tell anything.
Thank you. Councillor Gratian, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is secure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Absolutely.
Thank you all. So we'll move on to the recognition of traditional custodians. East Gippsland Shire acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and Bidawell people as the traditional custodians of the land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and emerging. I believe all councillors are present tonight, so there is no apologies to be noted. Has anyone a declaration of a conflict of interest to declare? I have two. Councillor Reeves, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I'm declaring a general conflict of interest at item 5.3.2, Disability Advisory Committee item.
Thank you. And Fiona Weigel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm declaring a conflict of interest in item 5.3.4, which is a planning matter.
Good, thank you. So we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. I trust everyone has...
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, for interrupting, but I need to also declare a conflict of interest for the same item as Ms Weigel. Sorry for that late entry.
Sorry, Martin, I never saw you hiding down there. So that one is noted as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So on to the confirmation of the minutes. Trevor is moving that they be accepted and adopted, seconded by Mindy. So we'll put that one to the vote. Is all in favour of that? Anyone against? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next meeting, Mr CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The next meeting is to be held in the Council Chamber on Tuesday, the 26th of April at 6 p.m. here at the Corporate Centre.
Thank you. Do we have any requests for leaves of absence?
None have been received, Deputy Mayor.
All right. Thank you. At this point, we'll just move away from the advertised agenda. We have a a condolence motion that we wish to put. So I'll hand over to the CEO to speak on behalf of the Shire, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to note, I can't move a motion at council. However, I would like to just sadly advise council and the broader East Gippsland community that Jodie Pitkin, who was a general manager with council, passed away yesterday after a long battle with cancer. Jodie was with us after the Black Summer bushfires and stepped in to the Place and Community General Manager role. Jodie was a can-do person with an infectious personality and made an indelible mark on our organisation. On behalf of councillors and staff, I pass my condolences to her husband and 2 children. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Anthony. Which takes us to open forum. I believe we have some, have we?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We do. We have a petition to be tabled tonight. That petition is yet to be assessed. However, the presenter would like to speak to the petition that she is presenting, which is pretty standard practice. So,
yep.
Do we have? Okay. So they are online.
So who's?
And that's Tina Genowan.
Oh, yeah, there's Tina there. Evening, Tina, and welcome. You've got the floor. Please go ahead.
Just before I start, I would just like to ask how much time I've got.
Normal 5 minutes.
All right, because my address is going to be about 3.5 minutes.
That's even better.
Okay, dear councillors, thank you very much for letting me speak today. My name is Tina Genyan and I am a primary school teacher and due to mandates without a job. I'm speaking on behalf of a growing group of concerned, active and contributing East Gippslanders, and we are asking the council to advocate on our behalf. In our diverse group, we have people that have not been vaccinated against COVID-19, but also people that have been vaccinated once or twice. I'm stating this to point out that we are not a group against vaccinations, but a group against discrimination. I also have many triple vaccinated friends that do not agree with this discrimination. We are against discrimination in our beautiful East Gippsland Shire, and we therefore are asking for your help. We have submitted a petition to the council office with over 100 signatures to be tabled at the next council meeting on the 26th of April. In this petition, we are asking for a cease and desist against all the discrimination against the unvaccinated in the Shire, as well as an end to access restrictions for people without a vaccine certificate. I would also like to point out that even though the mandates in discrimination are a state matter, when the Kelber mine at the fingerboards was proposed and discussed in the meeting on the 1st of December 2020, councillors decided to speak for the people of the East Gippsland community and made its local position known regardless of it being a state government decision. In this meeting in 2020, there were many wonderful comments made that were highlighting your care for the people in East Gippsland, such as when Councillor John White said, and I quote, "We were elected to represent our community, and it is our community that is crying out. There are already people out there facing what I would call mental health issues. It is our responsibility. They are our people. They are residents of East Gippsland, and it is our job to support them first and foremost." Quote end. In the last council meeting, you referred me to the Health and Wellbeing Act 2008. So I went away and did my homework, and I'm very pleased to point out to you that I believe there is a way around the pandemic order, at least the way I have interpreted it. Can I please bring to your attention the Health and Wellbeing Act 2008 and the Pandemic Open Premises Order number 5. You will find that under section 203, subsection 2 of the Act, it states, "A person is not guilty of an offence against subsection 1 if the person has a reasonable excuse for refusing or failing to comply. For me, that means if I choose to not comply with the pandemic orders and have a reasonable excuse, I do not have to show a vaccine passport to get into the library, the cinema, the Orbost show, the field days. So I chose not to be discriminated against. Section 32 of the Open Premises Order number 5 can be used by council to make decisions independently from the state if the councillors consider the order and therefore the discrimination against the unvaccinated to be unjust. We do not believe that this clause has been adequately considered, and we believe our council should explore this for its community. I also would like to point out that South Australia already has, and Queensland will be dropping most mandates. This is all we're asking for. Please support us, a minority that is being discriminated against. Support us by speaking up for our rights and the freedom we are entitled to as Australian citizens. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Right, so that covers petitions, CEO? Yes.
Correct.
Yes, all right.
Thank you. We do have one question of council. Now, I'm not sure if that person is online or not. Rhonda Coates, who we met today, in fact. Is Rhonda online? Well, given Rhonda's not online, Deputy Mayor, I'm happy to read out her question, and I believe that the General Manager of Assets and Environment may have a response for her.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. So this is from Rhonda Coates. Her question is, what is the EGSC, East Gippsland Shire Council, going to do about its poor record of mowing in Buchan? This has been an ongoing issue for many years and needs addressing. I will pass to the General Manager of Assets and Environment.
Thank you, CEO. As you outlined, Ms Coates was actually at lunch with councillors and senior staff today, so I had the opportunity to discuss this with her. And I could outline that we have had, as we've discussed around this table many times, a very long and prolonged growing season, a very unusual growing season, which has meant that our normal turnaround for mowing, which is 2 to 3 weeks, has sometimes not been sufficient. I explained this to Ms Coates and indicated that our program for Buchan is every 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 weeks. And we've also purchased, recognising that areas like Buchan also have a number of steep slopes that need mowing on a regular basis, and that these represent an OH&S safety issue for our officers, have actually purchased a remote mower so we can purchase these slopes regularly. On further discussion, I understand that Ms Coates was particularly concerned about mowing around major events such as the Easter holidays and making sure the town looks its best. So I've taken that on notice, and we'll discuss with our staff ways of making sure that we can always make sure that Buchan is looking its best for major events and major times when people are coming to the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. So, next item is public submissions.
There are none.
There we have none.
Deputy Mayor.
Which moves us on to notices of motion, which I believe we have none. Deferred business, I believe there is none. So now we get to councillors and delegates' reports. And I think we'll turn the order around and take the last, who's normally the last first, and I'll ask Mayor Mark if he would like to lead off with his report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, I've got a couple of items that I'd like to share with you. And the real highlights of the last couple of weeks, councillors, were the 2 concerts, the Rural Recharge concerts put on at Buchan and Malakuta by Paul Kelly, Gordy and Harry Hookey. These were astonishing, councillors, and I know that some of you had a look at the Councillor Connect website and have seen the small Victorian Government video of it. But 400 people and 800 people at Buchan and Malakuta respectively enjoyed an amazing night of food, entertainment, some very nice beverages, and a chance to get together again and to really glue a community together that had been fractured by the events over the last couple of years. It was a real triumph. And councillors, I think I just wanted to recognise the work done by the events team to pull this together. It was an extraordinary piece of work to make it happen and happen on consecutive nights, and to have so many people really enjoy Paul Kelly. What an absolute privilege to have Paul Kelly right there in our midst. Recently, councillors up at Omeo, the pump track, enjoyed a competition shootout. Now, if you haven't seen young people or even older people doing the pump track at speed, I think the record was something like 13 seconds to do a loop of that pump track, which was pretty impressive. And it really put that Omeo pump track on the national and possibly the international stage for what it should be, and that is a world-class destination, and it will be in future. Councillors, the Australian Wood Design Exhibition was opened in Orbost. That is just a beautiful building and an amazing display, and I urge you all to go and have a look. And last weekend, after a couple of years' absence, we enjoyed the Paddy's Bairnsdale Cup at Bairnsdale Raceway again. What a great event, and to see everybody enjoying a beautiful autumn day at the races. And there might have been a few winners picked, especially from the locals. Councillors, that's enough from me for the moment.
Thank you, Mark. Excuse me. Sonia, could you be next, please? She seems to have frozen.
I had a little bit of a glitch in the video.
Yep.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I've had an interesting week where I was invited to speak on Tuesday with the group of people that Tina, who spoke before, has been before in regards to the petition, is representing. And I must say it was a diverse range of constituents who presented a fair argument in regards to feeling discriminated against by state legislation in regards to mandates. And I welcome that there are opinions. I understand that there's a diverse range of views in the community, but I certainly support their position on feeling discriminated against, and look forward to discussing this with the councillor group and seeing what feelings around the council chamber is in regards to being able to support what they're asking us for. So that was one meeting that I attended. Also, I was in contact with some homelessness issues during the last period of time, and I must say it was heart-wrenching to see that we've got an increase in seeing people sleeping rough. And I went and met with some of the people that are responsible, the Bairnsdale Neighbourhood House, who distribute care packages. And whilst I was there, I saw the conditions in which they're very cramped, and I'm happy to say that they're long-awaited planning permit, and to be able to see that facility be brought up to scratch. They do a great service there, and I was shown around their facility, so fully supportive of that. And also seeing a new community garden be reinvented in that space. But I will be advocating along with Councillor Van Diggle to address some of these issues that East Gippslanders will be facing in the future, especially considering that we're going into foreseeable hard times. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Sonia. John, would you like to go next, please? Councillor White.
Thank you. It's strange for me sitting on a computer screen. This is the first time I've done a council meeting from that position. I've not been out and about. Certainly have taken phone calls. They're okay. I'm self-isolating, but I don't have COVID. I'm self-isolating so as I do not catch COVID. I've been waiting for some considerable time for some eye surgery, and that is booked in for next week. So therefore, that is why I've not been out and about, because of course, if I do catch the disease, they won't touch me, and goodness knows when I'll get this fixed. So that's it. I apologise to of our community that I'm not out and about, but it's just a personal issue. So I've got nothing to report. Thank you.
Thanks, John. At least when people ask you to come and have a look at something in the future, you may be able to see it. So we wish you the best.
I'll probably be able to see it their way.
Good idea. Councillor Jane Grecian, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I haven't been out and about that much either. I had a week away and then a week in isolation with COVID. But I did go to the Bairnsdale Regional Health Services Closing the Gap ceremony on the 17th of March, which was a lovely day and a lovely group of people, mostly from the Aboriginal community and staff at the hospital. And just talking about meeting the team, the Aboriginal hospital liaison group of people who, many of whom are fairly new in the job, but working really, really well. And talking about how the hospital has turned itself around in the last 10 or 15 years to becoming a place which is where people feel really safe and welcomed. So it was a good event. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Kirsten Van Diggle, go ahead.
I've actually been quite busy over the last 3 weeks. I did isolate since Friday because I believed I had COVID, but tested negative. So this last few days I haven't been up to much, but the last 3 weeks have been really, really busy for me. So a lot of it will be in the minutes, but I just wanted to share a couple of things. I had the privilege of meeting the Safe Cycling group at Paper Chase in Bairnsdale a few weeks ago. They approached me a number of weeks ago because they wanted me to attend an event that they were running to celebrate the new jerseys that they received through a council grant, and also wanted to share some of their thoughts with me about how East Gippsland can become a safer place for cyclists. I initially thought that there might be 3 or 4 people waiting there for me, but I would say that there was definitely over 20 people. And initially I was like, oh no, it's going to be a grilling, but they were just really, really passionate about cycling and raised some concerns. So I put a more in-depth thing in the minutes, but just some of the things that they were saying was along Porch Creek Road, they no longer feel safe to cycle because of the barriers. Some parts and Old Painesville Road, there's a lot of wattles on the ground that they're really thin tyres. They can't really cycle there safely. There's also one man that has a camera on his bike at all times that shows really close near misses, and they're not accidents. A lot of the near misses have been at roundabouts in the main street or on Painesville Road where people are purposely getting really close to him. And it just goes to show the level of ignorance we have towards our cyclists in our region. So I'd be really interested to work with council on figuring out how we can be a more cycle-friendly region. I come from Holland, where that's the focus is cyclists, and I know we're never going to get there, but just providing safer roads. I personally would love to ride to work every day, and I live now in Bairnsdale, and I feel unsafe to ride to work. So I'd be really interested in exploring that. So yeah, there's more details in the minutes, and I will be talking to councillors about it as well, because I think it'd be really valuable to hear from that group. I also attended the Gippsland Youth Projects Partnership at the Bairnsdale Hub, which is a partnership between East Gippsland, Wellington and Latrobe Valley, and the aim of it is that they're going to purchase 2 minibuses that go throughout the region to all the smaller towns and deliver programs and services. At the moment, they're looking for staff, and I really do wish them luck, because it's very hard to find staff at the moment. But the cool aspect of this is that all the money that will be spent and all the programs that will be delivered will go through a youth committee. So there'll be a bunch of young people on the committee who will determine where the funds will go. And I think giving young people that ownership to decide what works for them and where money should be spent is a really empowering process. So I really look forward to seeing how that goes. And all the other stuff I've done will be in a minute, but I just quickly wanted to say that I attended the Alpine School Community Leadership Project presentation last week, and it was awesome for me to be in a space where young people just share their passion and their interests and I actually had no idea what I was in for when I went. I had no idea what to expect, but it was the young people talking about their community leadership project, which they'll take back to their old schools, to their normal schools. There were some great ideas like Malakuta, they want to actually change their school uniform. The young people don't feel like feel ownership and passionate about their school uniform, so they're actually going to advocate for a change of school uniform, and they want to develop an art mural to try to encourage tourists to keep their town clean and to encourage people to put their litter in the bin. And they had a really cool slogan, which I can't quite remember, but everyone in different parts of Victoria had different projects in their school. And just as a young person, I was just so inspired by the passion that they had. So thank you, Mark, for being a principal of such an amazing school. And I want to attend every single year, and I encourage everybody to attend. That's all. The rest is in the minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. Councillor Yuri, Mindy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I also have a written report which I would like to submit to go out with the minutes, but I just wanted to mention a couple of events in particular. I just wanted to start by saying that I'm sure we're all disappointed not to get to Now and Orbost in this 2-day community visit. Yes. And I wanted to appreciate our staff for the enormous amount of work that goes into planning for those visits. And it must be terribly disappointing to have that cancelled at the last minute, but I think it was a really good call in the end. I also wanted to appreciate all our staff and emergency service personnel who once again have been called out to help people in the community and to keep people safe. I attended, since the last meeting, an MAV online training session around sexual harassment. This was, I think, 2.5 hours, so it was quite a considerable training session. It was hosted by Diane Wollaston from Human Rights Commission. This is such a big issue, but I think it's really interesting. There were only 2 participants in the course, and it's such an important issue, but seems to be overshadowed often by other things that happen in local government. I was once again reminded that 44% of female councillors have experienced sexual harassment in the last 12 months, and 19% of male councillors. So I think that indicates how widespread it is. And there's still a lot of confusion about it in some quarters, I think. What defines sexual harassment is a really important thing to understand, and that was covered in this training, which I really appreciated. And I think one of the things that stood out for me was the continuum from everyday sexism and jokes and attitudes to inappropriate conduct to unlawful conduct, and then that often leads to criminal conduct. So really important issue in our community. I know it's very squarely on the radar of our council, internally and externally, and I'm proud of the work that we do in that area. The second thing I wanted to highlight, also another important issue, since our last meeting, obviously there's been incredibly devastating flooding in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. There's been another bleaching event on the Great Barrier Reef. There have been simultaneous recordings of 30-degree increase in temperature in the Arctic and 40-degree increase in temperature in the Antarctic. A second repeated flooding in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales, and of course our own flooding events in East Gippsland. While we can't say specifically that any of these events relate to climate change, I think it's quite clear that these events are increasing in frequency and severity. Today, with the release of another IPCC report, which said that the global greenhouse gas emissions are at their highest levels in human history, but the rate of growth has slowed, probably relating to the decrease in costs of solar and wind energy. So we can only hope that that continues. Of course, the matter of mitigation and adaptation to our heating planet is of great urgency to us all. And just a note that we are expecting our next draft, the next draft of our environmental sustainability strategy to come to council in the next few weeks. I'm sure we're all looking forward to that because it will include actions around what council is doing around climate change. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mindy. Councillor Stowe. Go ahead, Trevor.
Thank you, Deputy. Look, I note there's been many events held throughout the Shire during the last 3 weeks. There's been cups, there's been woodworking, there's been some artist, Paul Kelly, is it? I've never heard of him anyway, Paul Kelly. But I had the pleasure of going to the seniors concert recently, which was a group called SOS doing their ABBA impersonations. Now, just for you young whippersnippers, now the whippersnippers, of course, is Councillor Tom, Councillor Kirsten, possibly CEO Anthony, who wouldn't be aware who ABBA are. ABBA are one of the main groups in the world in the last 100 years. You would probably know that the great Molly Meldrum brought them out to Australia, introduced them to the world and made them famous, to which they're eternally grateful, and they still remember Australia for that. Anyway, the seniors in the Shire...
Most happy lyrics, just saying, so...
pardon me for speaking while you're interrupting, Kirsten. I didn't quite get that. Anyway, as you may not know, the seniors make up about a third of the Shire. A third of our customers are in fact seniors over 60. Now, we should all remember that when we're talking about various aspects of our job and what we do. Very important group. And this group are out in force at the Morwell Sporting Convention Centre, and I had the pleasure of introducing SOS a la ABBA. And look, I tell you what, they were out and they were rocking and they were rolling. ABBA was down there, down the floor, and the 60-year-olds were going for it. And it was just a fabulous event to be involved in. Now, we're having 2 more of these events later on, not with ABBA, but no doubt other groups, later on in the year in October, and I trust you'll all take an interest in this. When the Johnny-come-latelys like the Paul Kellys and these people are all forgotten, ABBA will stand alone. They will be there, and it was great to be at that function a week ago.
Tom Crook, Councillor Tom Crook, how do you follow that?
Thank you, Councillor Stowe, for that ABBA rendition. I think it might have been an ABBA tribute band rather than the actual ABBA show. But anyway, look, I had the great pleasure of attending the opening of the National Wood Design Exhibition in Orbost. That's really been the highlight of my last couple of weeks at the Exhibition Centre. This is a building that was built with grant funding that was obtained by the community of Orbost now some years ago. But the Wood Design Exhibition actually stretches back, has about a 30-year history, I've been told. The building was constructed for a multitude of purposes, but specifically to house the National Wood Design Exhibition, to extol the virtues and the beauty of timber products and really highlight the true value of timber in what used to be Timber Town, so quite appropriate. The quality of the woodwork in the exhibition is absolutely amazing, and I really encourage everybody who has the opportunity to go and check that out. And I'd just like to highlight the real value that the Exhibition Centre brings to the Orbost community. It really is quite an incredible building. The National Wood Design Exhibition is on permanent display, and I've been told, in fact, is East Gippsland Shire's only permanent art display or gallery that displays a collection. And look, it really is it's an unsung champion of Orbost, and I know that it's been run by volunteers for pretty much its entire existence, and that those volunteers really do work tirelessly, but that the energy levels are low. And I can see that the Exhibition Centre is such a great asset for that community into the future, but it really is in danger of having to close its doors at this stage, so I'm told. So I really look forward to working with both the Orbost community and the council to see that great community asset utilised to the greatest extent possible into the future, and hopefully there will be many more wood design exhibitions to come. I'll leave it there, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I'll go back to the 23rd of March, where I attended the annual Centenary House fundraising breakfast down at Howard Park. And for those who don't know, Centenary House is an accommodation facility alongside the Traralgon Hospital where people who are undergoing treatment for cancer can stay during the weekday while they have their treatment. And the significance of Centenary House to East Gippsland is that 70% of the people who go through there, which are numerous, are from eastern Gippsland. And I'd just like to mention the contribution of Noel and Rhonda Wheeldon since its inception, and still battling on and still raising substantial funds for Centenary House as it expands to try and keep up with the demand. On the 25th, I had the honour of opening the Armoury out at the Riviera Christian Centre, which is a men's shed with a bit of a difference in that it also provides mental health first point of contact services, and I think that will be a great asset to the community because, as we all know, there's a big demand for mental health, and particularly with men who are tough and don't talk about it, but it's something that we really need to confront. The wood exhibition, I think Tom and Mark have both spoken about that, but it was a fantastic show, and I would, as not being parochial or anything, but I would mention that Tommy Russell, better known as Tommy Tucker, who was a fellow fisherman for many, many years, one of his pieces has gone into the permanent collection out of that exhibition, so that's a bit of a point for Lakes Entrance. Last Tuesday, I had the pleasure of welcoming the new rector of St John's Church, Bairnsdale, and his family to the district, his wife Emma and two sons. And I welcome them on behalf of the Shire, and he's a lively character, and I think he'll do a very good job in the district, not only within the church but within the community. He's a bit of a live wire. Last Thursday, I, along with a very large number of people, particularly from Lakes Entrance, farewelled one of our much-loved characters and teacher in Nabi Mullet. Nabi died suddenly at a very tender age of 54, I think he was, but it was a testament to everything that Nabi was, that half the town turned out to pay respects to his cortages that passed through the town. And at the funeral at Lake Tyers later in the day, there was numerous of his past students over the last 22 years that he'd been a teacher at St Brendan's, including all the St Brendan's staff that attended that farewell for Nabi. So Nabi, rest in peace. And finally today, because Mark was flooded in and otherwise detained, I actually had the pleasure of being able to announce at Buchan that the Shire will make available $1.2 million to start off the funding of their Recreation Reserve Master Plan. That's not all the money we need, but it is certainly going to kickstart it, and hopefully we will be able to tap into other sources of funding to bring this facility to the community that really is crying out for it. So that's all I've got to report, so thank you. Which leads us on to our officers' reports. And where are we? The first one is 5.1.1, which is the Murray Rail Basin project. Anthony, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. The report before you, titled Murray Basin Rail Project, is a report that has been presented to Council at the request of the Rail Freight Alliance, which Council is a member. The request is for, as a member, for council to support their advocacy campaign for the completion of the Murray Basin Rail Project ahead of the Victorian state election. The Rail Freight Alliance considers that there are two clear objectives to ensure the success of this project and the future freight movements in Victoria. Complete the project to its original scope and ensure that the Victorian rail freight network remains in state ownership and control. As members of the RFA, officers are of the view that it is important to support their activities and initiatives regardless of the location, because this is good for rail freight, which is good for regional Victoria, which is good for all of us. I won't go into the specific details of the project. They're contained within the report. However, it is important, I think, to note that these projects are about economic growth, creating jobs, providing a major boost to the transport industry, agricultural sector and regional communities. As I said, whilst this particular project is not in Gippsland, I think we can relate to the fact that rail is an important component of the transport network. Council, you have two options in relation to this, whether you agree to be part of the campaign as a member or whether you choose not to participate. The officer's recommendations are there for your consideration. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Is there any questions to Anthony on that? Jane, Councillor Grecian, go ahead.
Thank you. I lost my hand, so I had to put my real one up. Thank you very much. Anthony, this is a really interesting report. So it's got some great information in it, but it's a little bit worrying about why it has been stalled, because the commitment was made 7 years ago, and it seems that not a lot has been done to bring all the to upgrade to standard gauge across this area. It's a really important project. It's obviously going to impact on us at some stage, and hopefully we will have a similar kind of work done to support, rail freight in East Gippsland or across Gippsland. But can I ask, is there any information about why it hasn't progressed?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. On page 10 of the report, there is reference to a VAGO report that did an assessment of the project, and you can see there that there are a number of issues that have been identified by VAGO which have impacted on the delivery of this project. The full VAGO report is also attached for councillors or community's information. But essentially there's been a number of issues, as I've outlined in the report, that have caused this project not to proceed at the pace or to the timelines that people had expected.
Yes, Jane, keep going.
Sorry, thanks, Anthony. I guess what I was wanting to know was, in very broad terms, some kind of description of what the issues are and what we're going to be advocating for if we support this.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. So, in broad terms, there appears to have been, based on the VAGO information, there appears to have been a lack of good governance arrangements in relation to the project. The management of the project does not appear to have been up to the standards expected. There was certainly commentary in the VAGO report around the experience of some of the people that were involved in the report. There is certainly other commentary about items in relation to the actual project implementation that haven't gone as hoped and have impacted on the ability to actually undertake the project. So to answer the second part of your question, in the background, in the officer recommendation, what's being recommended is that council, as a member of the Rail Freight Alliance, write to the Premier of Victoria expressing our concerns over the status of that project, and also that the original commitment to deliver the original scope of the project, which was 50-50 funded by the Commonwealth to the tune in total of over $400 million, is actually delivered. And so that's what we are seeking as part of the resolution here, Councillor Greason.
Thank you, CEO.
No one else got anything? Oh, yes, Councillor Erie.
Thank you. Just a brief question, Mr CEO. So just for clarity, so every member of the Rail Freight Alliance is being asked to support a similar approach to the state government, I assume?
Yes.
Is
Through
that
you,
correct?
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions, we have a recommendation. Have I got a motion, please? Councillor Crook and Councillor Grecian. Would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Certainly, thank you. Look, rail transport for a country the size of ours is a no-brainer. I find it hard to believe that we don't have a standard national gauge railway for the entire country. Now, this project seeks in part to move us closer to that objective. Now, I won't pretend to understand all the intricacies of why it hasn't happened the way it should, but it appears that the state government has a very clear role to play here that isn't being fulfilled, that we're not keeping up our end of the bargain as Victoria. And while this doesn't relate directly to our Shire, as a member of the Rail Freight Alliance, I feel like it's only the right thing to do to be supporting the broader Rail Freight Alliance in this issue. And so I recommend that we vote for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Grecian.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Crook, obviously. I think it's a really important program. I think it's important that it goes right across the country. Rail, sort of freight and passenger, needs to be upgraded, and I really hope that we can encourage state government to get a move on with this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? All right, in that case, I will put it to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
That's unanimous.
Councillor Van Diggle, you got your hand up? Yeah, you're just not on screen with it. Yeah, that's it. I see it. Thank you. All right, let's move on to 5.2. And 5.2.1 is the rate waivers. Who are we looking for?
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, yes. Yeah, good. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Councillors, before you is a report titled Rate Waivers, which is proposing to extend rate waivers to those eligible properties that have yet to be fully rebuilt, which were affected by the Black Summer 2019-20 bushfires, for a further period of 2 financial years, being the 22-23 financial year and the 23-24 financial year. Councillors, you'll recall that back on the 17th of March 2020, Council resolved to submit an application for funding from the Council Assistance Fund to the value of $3.6 odd million, further resolved on the manner in which that funding would be allocated over the ensuing 3 years. With regard to this report before you today, it's estimated there are still approximately 150 properties where the main dwelling had been destroyed or assessed as requiring demolition as a result of Black Summer 2019-20 bushfires that have yet to be rebuilt. Property owners in deciding to rebuild have also had to contend with, amongst other things, delays in securing builders, issues in obtaining materials and supplies to build to a higher safety standard, and obviously the added layer of complexity that the pandemic and lockdowns brought with it. This report recognises the ongoing impact on these property owners, and the report is proposing to extend the rate waivers to those eligible properties those 2 financial years, 22-23 and 23-24. It's estimated that the financial impact of an extended rate waiver of this nature will approximately total $180,000, which will be distributed in this order: approximately $100,000 in the 22-23 financial year and about $80,000 in the 23-24 financial year, with funding sourced from bushfire recovery. Councillors, the report and recommendations are presented to you for your consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Has anyone got any questions of Peter? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr Cannizzaro, I'm just wondering, the financial years of 2021 and the current financial year of 21-22, I don't think are mentioned in this report, but are they also, the rate waivers also apply to those years in a similar way?
No, this report is only going to start the 22-23 financial year, Councillor Uri, and then through to 23-24.
So I'm wondering about the people who are affected by this proposal. What help are they being given? What support have they been given since the bushfires in terms of rate waivers?
As I mentioned earlier, Councillor Uri, the Council Assistance Fund that Council allocated approximately $3.6 million, $1,082,000 were allocated over 3 years for rate waivers, which encompassed this financial year as well. Hence, this report is covering the financial year 22-23 and 23-24.
Okay, thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Got it.
Councillor White. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr Cannizzaro, I understand that there are a few properties where the dwellings were lost that actually are not able to be built on due to the proximity of vegetation. Is that still the case, and how are we going to be able to help these people?
Thanks for the question, Councillor White. There will be some, but I don't have a number of those on hand at the moment, Councillor White. So where they haven't been, this is just about where the properties have not been able to be fully rebuilt, and that's the extent of the proposal.
I understand that. It's more about that the rate waiver time will expire, but these particular properties will still not be able to build a house. I'm wondering if there's a plan in place for those people who are just going to be sitting on some perhaps almost worthless blocks of land.
Mr Deputy Mayor, I wonder if Mr McConnell would be better to answer that question in relation to the work that they're doing through the bushfire planning support program.
Yeah. Thank you. Stuart, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, there are a range of programs in place to support people through the rebuilding process. I won't go into all of the details of those programs now, but particularly when it comes to the most complex builds, I would need to double check this, but to date I don't think we've come up against one where someone had an existing occupied primary place of dwelling that was unable to be rebuilt. However, in some cases they are very expensive rebuilds, and so for practical purposes it's very difficult for that person to rebuild, and in those circumstances, in addition to the range of other assistance that's available, in most cases that person would qualify for a buyback or a resettlement arrangement, which there are provisions for that within the current bushfire recovery arrangements, in which there's the opportunity for the state to buy the property at market value.
Thanks, Stuart. Any further questions? No. Well, given that we have a recommendation, so Councillor Crook, are you removing a motion? Yes. So we have Councillor Crook, and could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Buckley. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. Mayor, councillors, I'm sure we all remember the horrors of the Black Summer bushfires. And just today in Buchan, there was a pretty stark reminder of the burnt hillsides and the burnt landscape on the way up there, and the impact that this natural disaster has had and continues to have on our communities. There's a legacy out there for us and other places too, I might add, that continues to live large, and this is a small, almost token but significant gesture that will remove some of the financial burden on those people who lost their homes during that disaster. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Sonia, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that it's imperative that we, as as a community, support not only financially but also the mental health impacts that a lot of our community have suffered, and also I think we should look into the future as a councillor group to ensure that we continue to make it easier for our community to be able to have preventative measures put in place, such as being able to cut some of the red tape around clearing vegetation to protect private assets, so that when people do rebuild, that they feel safer in their environment. So I hope that by commending this motion, that we are able to support those people most in need.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Well, in that case, I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. So we'll move on to 5.3, Place and Community, and 5.3.1 is Youth Ambassadors 2022-23 Action Plan and Terms of Reference Review. Stuart, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report that seeks three things. One is endorsement of the action plan prepared by the Youth Ambassadors. The second is endorsement of the terms of reference, and the third is the appointment of councillor representatives to provide a liaison point between councillors and the Youth Ambassadors. The East Gippsland Youth Ambassadors is a group of young people aged between 12 and 25 that live, work and study in East Gippsland, who are committed to creating positive change in their community. The Youth Ambassador Committee for 2022 have developed their action plan, which includes priority areas around mental health, connecting to culture and advocacy, along with other related items that they have identified as being beneficial in bringing about positive change. The Youth Ambassadors Committee has also reviewed their terms of reference, and they have been updated accordingly in line with the action plan. And as part of that, has included the opportunity for the appointment of two councillors to be the liaison point between council and the Youth Ambassadors. And so both the Youth Ambassadors and council officers are seeking your endorsement of the action plan and the terms of reference, and also the appointment of councillor representatives. I just note the recommendation identifies the councillor representatives as being the Mayor ex officio, and then one other in addition to that to be nominated.
Yep. All right, before I ask for any questions, I just welcome Alistair Miles, who has joined to answer any questions that we may have. So is there any questions? All right, before I move to the officer's recommendation, Jane, sorry.
Thank you. No, I'm a bit slow. Look, it's more a comment, I suppose. I think the terms of reference and goals of this Youth Ambassador program are laudable, but I'd just like to make a comment that the programs you've taken, the young people have taken on, is huge. But I'd just like to comment, I think that linked to mental health and connecting to culture is the issue around loneliness, which is, experienced by people moving to East Gippsland as well as people living in East Gippsland, young people. And I think it's really important that we are an actively welcoming region not just for residents, but for people coming in here. It's part of attracting new people into the area and retaining them. It's essential for our economic development and providing, for communities actively living in all senses with arts and sports and music and culture and work, etc., etc. So I know it's an enormous task that you've taken on, the youth ambassadors, and I really wish them well. I think it's a great program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So before we move to the officer's recommendation, we need a second councillor to be nominated. That was quick. Councillor Crook.
I'd just like to nominate Councillor Kirsten Van Diggle for that role.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Stowe was equally as quick, and Councillor Buckley and Councillor Grecian. Given that, Councillor Van Diggle, you're going to be very hard pressed to say no, but do you accept that nomination?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So in that case, the recommendation, Representative B, will be Councillor Van Diggle. So we have a recommendation in front of you. Have I got Councillor Uri moves it. Have I got a seconder, please? And Councillor Buckley beat Councillor Grecian by a nose. So, Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to it, please?
Thank you, Mr Deputy. This is a great report, and I think from conversations we've had around this table, I think there's a great deal of support from the councillor group for this Youth Ambassador program, recognising how important it is for our future. So it's great to see this ambitious program that they have in front of them. I know that they will be given a deal of support from our staff, and that may be needed if they're to really realise some of these big goals that they have. But I also wish them very well in their endeavours and congratulate the youth ambassadors themselves, and really look forward to the reports back to this council to see to hear what their activities are and what they manage to achieve. So I recommend the recommendation to other councillors.
Thank you, Mindy. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to it?
Certainly. Look, there's nothing more important than being a young person with lofty goals and being able to go out into the community with gusto and achieve those goals. Let's face it, our young people are our future, and they have a lot to learn from the elders in the community, and it's up to the elders in the community to support their progress and do it with wisdom and guidance. And I think that they've got a lot of support to do that. And I certainly wish Councillor Van Diggle every success in her role and the Mayor, so that they can support that process. So we look on with interest, and anything that we can do as a council group, I'm sure we will. So congratulations, Kirsten.
Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Well, we have the motion, so I'll put it to the vote. Oh, Councillor Reeves, hang on, sorry. You wish to speak for the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think that this is a really important piece of work here, and just wanted to echo what Councillor Buckley said. And it's really important that young people have lofty goals. That's a great expression. Now, the risk is not that they have lofty goals, but they have goals that they achieve too easily. And they should make those goals just that little bit out of reach and keep grasping at them. And this is a really important group of young people. They've been drawn together from across the Shire, and I think that the staff who have facilitated that have done an amazing job to give them voice and to give people voice wherever their postcode is. They're a great group of young people. It's really exciting. I can't wait to see them get together and to go and kick some goals.
Thank you. All right, and no one else wishes to speak? At that point, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimously carried. Thank you. 5.3.2 is the Disability Advisory Committee appointments for 22 to 24. And at this point in time, Mark has already declared a conflict. So once this matter's resolved, we will call you back. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll drop out now.
He's gone. Good. All right. So again, I think it's over to Stuart. Is it? Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors. This report seeks the appointment of community representatives to Council's Disability Advisory Committee, and the appointments, or the recommended appointments, are as detailed in Attachment 3. The committee provides advice to Council on matters which are important to people with a disability in East Gippsland, and it seeks to maximise the contribution being made by Council and its partners by working with a common agenda to create a more inclusive and accessible East Gippsland. The committee provides a voice for people with a disability and a framework for Council to engage with the community on access and inclusion issues. I just would note that Attachment 3 identifies the recommended candidates. That's a confidential attachment at this stage, but if Council proceeds and decides to appoint those people, then subsequent to advice going to those individuals, an announcement will be released in relation to the appointments. So, councillors, you have the recommendations, and happy to take any questions.
Now, do we have any questions from anyone? Yeah, Councillor Crook.
Thank you. I note that we're allowed up to 14 representatives on this committee. That's correct, but we have only 12 applicants at this stage. Will we be re-advertising to fulfil the full quotient for that committee? Or are we happy with the representation that we've got?
I think at this stage, councillors, the intention is to proceed with the representation we've got, which provides a good spread, but that can be reviewed at different points if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Councillor Van Diggle, go ahead.
I can't find my raise the hand button, so a few times I've raised my hand and I don't think it's been seen, so I'll put it in front of my... That's all right, that's all right. I was just wondering if, following on from Tom's question, if there's still room for 2 more, can they join, you know, if someone else showed interest in a couple of months' time, or do we only appoint, say, yearly or every 2 years? Are we able to have someone join if they fit the criteria and want to be part of it?
So ultimately, these matters are matters that are decisions that are within Council's remit in any case. I might just ask Alistair or Rebecca Pantry, if she's online, just what the practice has been in relation to this.
Thanks, Stuart, and hopefully you can hear me. Thanks for your question too, Councillor. So there is an interim appointment opportunity during year 1, absolutely, and Council is very welcoming of additional attendees as guests as well. So for pre-existing members or for any new representatives who would like to touch base with the group, absolutely, we welcome that opportunity. So there's the opportunity to formally be involved in year 1 still, and also additional opportunities to tap into the group as a guest.
And just another quick follow-on question. I think I read in the report that you can't be part of an organisation or a service, like you have to be either have lived experience or be a carer or something like that. Is that correct?
So councillors, through you, Deputy Mayor. So I think the intention with that is there are people who can attend or participate from an agency perspective, but they are not there representing their agency. They're there in their personal capacity. That's making that distinction.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any further questions? If there is none, I will ask for a motion. We've got a recommendation. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Grecian and Councillor Crook. Councillor Jane, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. The Disability Committee is a really important one. It's got a great job keeping Council on our toes. ensuring that everything we do gives absolute inclusivity through accessibility for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Thank you. Look, just to add to that, I too agree that it's a really important committee for our council. It really helps us fulfil our legal obligations as well to reduce barriers to good services and facilities for people with disability, and just make sure that the voices are heard in all things that we do. There's a role for this committee to play in all our major developments and our policy implementation right across the Shire. So it's an important committee. I'm really glad that we've got 12 excellent applicants, and I hope we can fulfil those other 2 positions in the immediate future.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Anyone else wish to speak for it? Yes, Councillor Urey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, just to add, I'm sure everybody's thanks to those people for putting their hand up to be part of this committee. Sometimes it's a little bit arduous to be, to represent a group of people on a council committee. I hope that that's not the case, but I recognise that it does take some effort and certainly time to be willing to do that. So just wanted to thank those people. Our communities are diverse, whether we hear from the full range of diversity or not. The diversity is there. So I also welcome the fact that we have 12 representatives, and I really wish them well in their work and look forward to hearing from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, we have a recommendation. No, we've had that. I'll put it to the vote. Sorry, getting lost. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. And Vanessa, could you call Mark back, please? We'll just wait for a moment till Mark reappears. Better put my glasses on to see when he does. Here he is. He's back. No, he says he's leaving. You're back again, Mark?
Here I am.
Good, thank you.
Thanks
All
for
right.
being back in.
So we'll move on to 5.3.3, which is the South Bairnsdale Industrial Estate Notice to Vary Special Charge Scheme. And I believe it's again Stuart.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors. This report recommends council formally endorse a notice of intent to commence the statutory process required under Section 166 of the Local Government Act to vary the South Bairnsdale Industrial Estate Special Charge Scheme. Councillors have previously been well briefed in relation to the merits of the scheme, so I won't go into that further here. What I would note is that the scheme has already been declared and requires some landholders located in the estate to contribute a portion of the funding required to facilitate works to upgrade water supply in the estate. There have been a couple of issues identified in the implementation of the scheme, and hence this recommendation to vary the scheme, and these relate to some properties which were not included in the scheme that should have been, and vice versa, and also some a subdivision that's gone through which has changed the title arrangements in relation to some properties subject to the scheme. So with that, councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you, and I won't read that out because it's relatively technical in its nature. But I do have Sharon Ragoose and Jenny Bailey online to assist with any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Good. Before I go to questions, I'll just welcome Sharon and Jenny. And is there any questions on that report? Councillor Crook.
Yes, thank you. I know that the scheme's already sort of under implementation. Is there some kind of sunset clause here, or are we likely to see further changes to the scheme as land is further subdivided?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, I don't anticipate that. There's some steps we can put in place to avoid the need for that in the future in terms of notification through our rates arrangements and so on. This was identified in the stages of implementation, and so effectively if council is to support the recommendation to vary and that goes through the necessary steps, then those changes will all be made prior to any notices requiring payment, etc. going out. So that will be a neater point to make those changes.
Okay. Any further questions? Cannot see any. We have a recommendation, so Councillor Stowe would like to move that as a motion and Councillor White seconding. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. Look, we've discussed this issue a number of times over the last 12 months, and I think we'll all be pleased to see it put to bed and the work completed. I think from memory the total cost of the work's $2.5 million, and we're asking the ratepayers to contribute $400,000 of that. I think we have general agreement from the South Bairnsdale Industrial Estate, and I'd recommend that we go ahead with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Trevor. Councillor John White, please.
Thank you. As Councillor Stowe said, we've actually been talking about this for 12 months. Well, that's only part of the story. We've been talking about this for years and years and years, and we need this done and post-haste, because what we've been sitting on here is the possibility of an absolute disaster, because those buildings are not protected with enough water. If there is a problem, somebody has an electrical fault or some accelerant goes up in a panel beating works or something like that, and we haven't had it happen, but it is always possible, and we just need to get this done as quick as possible now. We've been talking about it for years and years and years, and it is very fortunate that we have not had a tragedy in that area through lack of possible, in the initial stages, just poor planning, and it's we need to get the proper firefighting resources in place for that whole state.
Good on you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Anyone else wish to speak for it? Well, in the absence of that, we have a motion, so now I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? Again, that's unanimous. So we will now move on to 5.3.4, and at this point in time, Fiona Weigel and Martin Richardson have both declared conflicts, so I'll just give them a minute to leave the room. So, Stuart, would you like to go through? Oh, and Robert, I welcome Robert too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report recommending grant of a planning permit for buildings and works to extend existing jetties within Bancroft Bay, opposite 185 Meetung Road, Meetung. The application relates to coastal Crown land in Bancroft Bay and received support by the public land manager being DELP, including the Marine and Coastal Act consent to develop the land. The application was subject to public notice as the normal process via letters to nearby property owners and occupiers and via a sign on site, and no objections have been received. If the development proceeds as planned, and the development relates to an extension of a jetty for a commercial use in that area, if the development proceeds as planned, a council managed berth, M27 is currently vacant, will be removed, and council are negotiating for a replacement berth in consultation with DELP and Gippsland Ports. Having considered the relevant matters for the public park and recreation zone and the relevant policies and decision guidelines, officers recommend that a planning permit is granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the attachment to this report. And as Deputy Mayor, as you mentioned earlier, Robert Pringle is on the line to assist with any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Is there any questions Councillor Crook.
Yes, thank you. I understand the land manager is Delp, is that correct?
So it's underlying Crown land, that's correct.
Right, but this is a private development?
So within that area currently, there's a portion of that land which is leased to the business for the purposes of the operation of a boat hire business. And then adjacent to that is land that council manages as part of the Marina as a committee of management on behalf of the Crown. So there's those two adjoining management arrangements in place.
And so the proposal would be to continue that lease arrangement and facilitate the development?
So alongside this planning consideration, and again, there's a range of approvals and adjustments that are needed to facilitate the project, but as part of that, yes, there will need to be an extension to the area that's currently leased by the business for the purposes of extending the jetty.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Uri.
Thank you. I know there have been no objections according to the report, but however, I know that berths are hard to come by around the lakes, and there will be the loss of one council-managed berth in this process. You mentioned that there is an ongoing process to try and find a replacement for that berth. I just wondered if there's any progress on that in the last week or two.
Yeah, so the relevant officer that is considering that matter has just returned from leave, and so those negotiations are continuing, and there was further meetings this week. At this stage, we don't have a definitive outcome, but we're quite hopeful of being able to step through a process to find an alternative berth. However, I would say that the officer's recommendation is not contingent on that.
Yes, indeed. Did I also read that that berth is vacant at the moment, the council-managed berth?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, that is correct.
Okay.
We've been just stepping through a process where that lease has come to a conclusion.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Any further questions? If not, we have a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Uri. We've got a seconder, Councillor Crook. Mindy, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, there's nothing else I wish to say. Thank you, Deputy
Thank
Mayor.
you. Tom?
I'll just point out that the proponent of this development, should the permit be granted and the wood development go ahead, has identified a range of economic benefits and flow-on effects to the local community, Meetung and beyond. So I think that while it is public land, and we need to be mindful of commercial development that uses public land, there will be public benefit in this case, in the form of economic development, jobs for locals, and increased tourism capacity for our region. So I see no problem with it, and I'm happy to recommend the motion.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? No? All right. So at that point in time, we will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous again. That brings us to 5.3.5. Oh, hang on. Could you call Fiona and Martin back, please? Sorry. There's Martin back, there's Fiona. All right. So 5.3.5, over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report regarding the proposed 6-lot subdivision of land at 55 Meridan Way, Newlands Arm, and the officer's recommendation is that a planning permit is approved subject to the conditions outlined in the report. The land is zoned low-density residential with a minimum permissible lot size of 2,000 square metres. A planning consultation meeting has been held where the objectors' concerns were raised and able to be considered. These have been then addressed within the report and considered in framing the recommendations. In particular, although the density of the subdivision is higher than the adjoining area to the west, the proposal is for large low-density lots between 2,000 square metres and 3,500 metres, or a little over 3,500 square metres. Land in the general residential zone to the east is subdivided at approximately 1,200 square metres. So the proposal creates, in the officer's view, a suitable transition in lot sizes between those two areas, whilst meeting the minimum requirements of the zone. The development of the lots will not unreasonably affect neighbourhood amenity, as the lots provide ample room for siting of the dwellings and establishment of large residential gardens. Vegetation removal will be kept to a minimum, and a condition of approval is proposed to allow some vegetation removal to the minimum extent required to gain access to the lots. The zoning of the land creates a reasonable expectation that land can be subdivided to provide low-density lots for housing development consistent with this application. The proposal is an infill subdivision of fully serviced land that meets the requirements of the zone and is unlikely to have a detrimental impact on neighbouring properties or the character of the area. The recommendation is the Council resolves to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit subject to the permit conditions at attachment 1. And also present online, as you noted earlier, Deputy Mayor, is Martin Richardson and also Robert Pringle, who can assist with any questions. So the report is presented for your consideration.
Thank you, Stuart. Is there any questions? Councillor Crook and then Councillor Stowe.
Thank you. And Robert or Martin, this is maybe a question for you. We've heard concerns around the density of this development and its impact on the potential neighbourhood character. I wonder if you can just speak a little bit to the average density of developments in the Newlands Arm area and how this fits within that context.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. So Newlands Arm settlement has two distinct areas. There is what we might refer to as the urban area of Newlands Arm, which was restructured following the original subdivision in the 1960s. Most of the lots in the urban area to the east of Meridan Way are in the region of 1,000 to 1,200 square metres, standard urban or suburban, if you like, lots. To the west of Meridan Way on Simpson Drive is the low density zone, and the low density zone extends all the way back Burrells Road to Lake Victoria Road, and in fact north of Lake Victoria Road. So to the west of the urban part of Newlands Arm is the low density residential zone. The pattern of subdivision in Simpson Drive has created lots of around between 4,000 and 5,000 square metres. Now this occurred at a time when that was the 4,000 square metres was the minimum lot size in the low density residential zone. The site we are referring to tonight is also in the low density residential zone, and the minimum lot size due to a ministerial decision in about 2014 is 2,000 square metres. So the 6-lot subdivision that we have, as Mr McConnell indicated, the lots are between 2,000 and about 3,500 square metres. So let's say an average of 2,500, 3,000 square metres. The lots in Simpson Drive are an average of about 4,000 to 4,500 square metres. So, councillors, when we talk about density, this is the low density zone. A lot of 2,000 square metres is a half an acre. That is a very large residential lot, and the low density zone provisions provide for a large residential lot. So 2,000 square metres, let's imagine a house of 250 to 300 square metres would occupy 1/6 or 1/8 of the size of that lot. So this is low density development. The area to the east in the township of Newlands Arm is not even high density, it's normal urban density, 1,000 to 1,200 square metres. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Crook.
Yes, I think it does. Thank you. I just have one subsequent question. There's also been concerns around if this development was to be approved, that would then see a cascade of further subdivisions on this side of the road. I just wonder is it the sewer line that's permitted the slightly higher density in this particular area, and would those other blocks then need to be sewered if they were to further be subdivided?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. So the development of Newlands Arm has changed as a result of the provision of reticulated sewer. Originally, it wasn't sewered, and that was why the area was restructured, so that those earlier tiny lots had to be joined up together to create enough area to provide septic tanks, and of course now sewerage has been provided. So in the area on Simpson Drive, it is potentially possible for owners of land to seek subdivision approval to subdivide down to 2,000 square metres. But looking at the pattern of subdivision, most of the houses in Simpson Drive have been built in the middle of the lot. It's kind of quite difficult to create a 2,000 square metre lot on a 4,000 square metre lot given where the houses have been built. And I'd suggest that most owners on Simpson Drive would not seek to cut off 2,000 square metres, even though it may be permissible. So yes, there is potential under the planning scheme provisions for people to further subdivide, but given the pattern of subdivision, it appears to be quite unlikely that there would be much more intensification of development in the low density zone in Newlands Arm.
Thank you.
Councillor Stowe.
Thank you. A question for either Robert or Martin. There's been some concern about the possible impacts of drainage and traffic to this new proposal. Could you reassure us that both of those aspects have been adequately met and addressed?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. So there are 6 lots proposed, and the pattern of this, the layout of the subdivision actually provides for shared driveways for 2 times 2 sets of lots. So we've got about 4 extra access points onto Meridan Way. That's quite safe, given quite low intensity development. So the traffic impacts have been assessed, and the reality is that we've got another 4 driveways onto the street, which is pretty low traffic volumes. From a drainage point of view, there is a condition, so the residents to the northwest did raise concerns about drainage. So we have proposed and recommended a condition that requires for drainage plans to be provided through approval of the subdivision, and it would be relatively simple for swale drains to be provided to the rear of these properties to then deliver stormwater to the council drainage system on Meridan Way. And given the size of the lots, it's relatively straightforward for drainage to be designed such that stormwater does not enter adjoining properties.
Thank you, Martin.
Councillor White.
Good, thank you. Martin, I did read in there that there are no building envelopes on these allotments. Is that correct? And also, is that normal?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. The earlier provisions of the low density zone required for an applicant to demonstrate that a dwelling could be provided on a lot within a building envelope. Again, as a result of the ministerial decision in 2014, that's not a requirement. It used to be, I guess, sort of tradition that council asked for an applicant to show that a house could be developed on a site in a low density residential zone. That provision was put in place to deal with areas which had difficult topography or vegetation or constraints on the site. This is basically, to put it bluntly, a flat paddock. It is going to be very straightforward for a dwelling to be provided on a 2,000 plus square metre lot, and so there is no obligation for the applicant to show building envelopes. And in fact, it's sometimes better to allow the owner of the lot to determine where they build the house. In all cases, for each of these lots, it is most likely that the dwelling will be built with a quite large rear setback to the adjoining properties. And so there is no obligation to show a building envelope, and it is easily demonstrable that a house can be built on each of these lots, so there should be no requirement for a building envelope.
Thank you. And one further question, as you discussed about the zoning along Birrells Road. So beginning, say, at Kyra Court or Corrins Crescent, which are basically a subdivision with a road through it to get the number of blocks that are out there. Are you saying that all the way along Birrells that those owners of the vacant land could subdivide to 2,000 square metres all the way back to what would be the water or the bottom end of Forge Creek? Is that whole area to the north able to be subdivided to that number of allotments?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I've got 7 windows open on my computer at the moment, so I've done a bit of research on this today. So yes, there is some vacant land on, there's no vacant land on Meridan Way. There's a lot to the south of this current one, which is zoned low density residential, and then we have the community centre. Then when we go back along Meridian Way, there is a large site in the low density residential zone which appears not to have been developed, but the rest of it has. So for those people who drive down Lake Victoria Road and hang a left onto Birrells Road, you'll see there are lots of low density residential zone properties with houses on them, and there is one remaining site that can be developed, but pretty much most of the land along Birrells Road has been developed for low density residential. And we would also require for the one largish property remaining that the development or subdivision of that land will be in accordance with the zone requirements. So there's not much opportunity, Councillor, for further growth in Newlands Arm. I would expect, given current number of dwellings in Newlands Arm is 383, I would say that the potential for growth in Newlands Arm is possibly another 20 or 30 dwellings, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Thank you, John. Sonia, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. My question is, are there any other battle axe blocks in Newlands Arm? Because I see that this development requires the battle axe type arrangement. So that's my first question.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. Again, I've had a look on our intramaps today, and I've counted. So there's 2 in Simpson Drive, and then I've worked my way back along Birrells Road, and I've counted so far 12 battle axe lots in the low density residential zone in Newlands Arm. Now, don't quote me too closely on that number, but I've been back through on our mapping system and I can find at least 12 battle axe allotments in the low density residential zone in Newlands Arm. So battle axe allotments, sometimes we have a bit of an anti-battle axe thing. They do serve the purpose of providing for a slightly more efficient development of land where the lots are deep, because there's an extra cost, a considerable cost with servicing land if you slice it up with horizontal lines. And I guess one of the benefits of battle axe allotments, and there are some disbenefits, is that you get a separation of dwellings. So councillors may notice as you drive around that you see a little driveway going up beside a house and you don't see the other house. So you get a 12 or 16 metre separation between dwellings for the driveways. There's also some disbenefits with battle axe blocks, because in some situations, they create a breakup of the streetscape. But in a low-density residential zone, there are actually some benefits in battle axe lots because they provide for separation of dwellings, and you don't get dwellings cheek by jowl on narrow frontages. So what it does with a narrow frontage is it means that you can put one house behind the other, and it means that the house at the rear can plant vegetation, grow gardens, and create a sort of green landscape around it. Sorry for the long answer, but yes, there are at least 12 and possibly more existing battle axe allotments in Newlands Arm in the low density residential zone.
And my supplementary question is, it's correct there was 27 objections to this planning permit? That's substantial, isn't it?
It is, yes, and the Act does require Council to consider the number of objections, given that that creates at least a perceived social impact. The objections were essentially on the grounds of the change of character of the area. So in response to that, the officers would say, well, we're dealing with a paddock at the moment and it's zoned low density and there is an expectation that there will be houses built on it. So I don't think anyone in Simpson Drive would have thought that there would not be development on this site. Certainly the objections refer to the fact that they are on lots of 4,000 and 5,000 square metres, and these are lots of 2,000 and 3,000 square metres. But again, our advice would be that there isn't really a significant difference between a lot of 2,000 or 3,000 square metres and a lot of 4,000 or 5,000 square metres compared to 1,000 or 400 or 500. Objections also referred to matters which officers considered to be not valid planning grounds, extra lawnmower noise, too many neighbours, too much traffic, and we would regard those objections as not being sound on planning grounds because we are only talking about 6 residential lots in an area which already has 383 dwellings.
Thank you, Sonia. Jane, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Arthur, and everyone else's questions. I actually don't think this respects neighbourhood character, and you call it transition, Martin, but I don't see how it's transition when at the same time you're saying that you don't believe anyone else or very few people on the western side of Meridan Way are likely to subdivide because of the location of their houses on their big blocks. So it's not really transition. The proposed subdivision would have properties with 23-metre frontages, and by normal urban standards that's big, but by these people's standards it's probably a quarter what their properties have. I accept that opposite which is currently farmland, is probably going to be subdivided at some stage, whether it's 1 year or 10 years, but I don't see it as respecting neighbourhood character. My questions are, you've said you think there's possibly another 20 dwellings in Newlands Arm. Now I'm assuming that's the whole of Newlands Arm. And then you talk about, how valuable battle axe development is. I would have thought the majority of the owners of the majority of properties west of Meridan Way could easily fit another property on there, could easily subdivide it, whether they have to use the battle axe or not. So the question is, and look, I respect your expertise and knowledge, etc., but I'm just making the point. The question is, how much of the population of Newlands Arm could feed? I mean, how much could there be an increase in population of Newlands Arm feasibly, if you assume that all of those 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square metre properties are subdivided? What is feasible for Newlands Arm to absorb? That's one question.
Thank you, Councillor, and if I could deal with that one, and I'm sure you may ask some more. So I just want to clarify, there are benefits and disbenefits with battle axe lots, and that is, that's an issue that we need to deal with. There are some advantages and others that are not. I just want to also respond to the suggestion that the farming land could be developed in the future. I will state categorically that will never happen. It will never happen. The planning scheme includes in the municipal planning strategy a statement about Newlands Arm, which has a settlement boundary around the urban area, and it states very, very clearly that that is the extent of development in Newlands Arm. There's a very thick black line around the existing urban area of Newlands Arm, which says that is the extent of development. It would take a massive exercise for anyone to ever rezone the farming zone land to the south of the Newlands Arm settlement, and as long as I'm alive, I would oppose it. There's a very clear and long-standing council strategy that Newlands Arm should not grow beyond its existing boundaries because it simply doesn't have the services to suit that. It doesn't have schools, it doesn't have excellent road access, it doesn't have shopping facilities. So the council's own planning scheme has a very clear strategic direction for Newlands Arm, and there is a strong boundary around the existing urban area which says Newlands Arm must not grow beyond that boundary. I hope that answers the question.
Well, it raises another one because I understood that part of that land, well, directly opposite 55 Meridan Way, I thought had been sold to developers. That part of it isn't farmland. So maybe you could clarify that first. Thanks.
Property at 55 Meridan Way is as presented by the officers in this report tonight.
Sorry, I meant the opposite Meridan, that 55. That's a
the farm. It's okay. So the property opposite. Thank you, Councillor, through you, Deputy Mayor. The property opposite and slightly to the southeast is in the farming zone. It cannot be developed. It simply cannot be subdivided. It would take a rezoning. It would take a ministerial authorisation. It would take 2 resolutions of council. I could almost guarantee it will never be rezoned.
Thank you, Martin. So therefore, I mean, that just strengthens the comment that the development as proposed isn't consistent with neighbourhood character when there's farmland directly opposite it. What you've said about not expanding Newlands Arm is really important, and for the reasons that you mentioned. And so I guess that's really my concern is how many more of these properties can be subdivided before it reaches a stage where we must look at establishing services like schools and shops and everything else that populations require to live a good life.
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I'll just reiterate the officer's advice. The planning scheme provides for the subdivision of the low-density zone to 2,000 square metres. There is limited opportunity for re-subdivision of most of the lots in Simpson Drive and to the west. There is limited opportunity for further subdivision of those lots. It is very unlikely that the planning scheme will allow much more intensification in Newlands Arm, and that's the strategic position that Council takes through its planning scheme.
You're on mute, Jane.
Yeah, thank you. So why allow this one if you don't think you will allow it for other properties?
I think that's the decision we're about to take, one way or the other. So I think that becomes a decision of council. Is that correct, Martin?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The reason why I allow this one is because the council is required to consider the provisions of the planning scheme and the zoning of the land. This is a large property in the low density residential zone where there would be a normal expectation for subdivision in accordance with the requirements of the planning scheme. The subdivision meets those requirements. The council is obliged under the Act to make decisions based on its own planning scheme. This is not, in the officer's opinion, inconsistent with the planning scheme, and the lots are largely consistent with the objectives of the low density residential zone.
Thanks, Martin.
Has anyone got any further questions? Tom?
I just wonder, Martin, or maybe Robert too, in your experience, if the council were to not go with the recommendation here and not approve this, and it was then to be taken to the Victoria Civil Administrative Tribunal, VCAT, by the proponent of the development, in your opinion, what do you think the likelihood of the proponent's success at VCAT would be to see our decision overturned?
Thanks, Councillor. And through you, Deputy Mayor, we never like to second guess VCAT. And as planning officers and staff of the council, we believe the council should make its own decisions and not be afraid of what happens on appeal. However, as I'm about to present to you next week and talk about your obligations under the planning scheme, if there's a minimum lot size and the subdivision meets the minimum lot size, if it's possible to put dwellings on the property, if there isn't excessive vegetation removal, if there are no significant amenity impacts, then VCAT's likely to say it complies with the planning scheme.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if there's no further questions, we have a recommendation. Oh, Sonia.
Sorry, I know that we want to get through this, but I do have one further question, and that to Martin. And that is if there is a possibility to defer this motion to go back to the developer for further consultation with the developer to consider potential perhaps design of the redevelopment. Is that a possible, to fit more into the aesthetics that the community expectations, certainly from all the objections that we've seen, would that possibly mitigate some, be an outcome that would mitigate, a no vote going to VCAT, or certainly give us more time to be able to negotiate with the developer to find perhaps maybe 4 blocks without battle axe designs may, meet with community expectation, or 3. So is that something that you could see would be a possible outcome as well?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Look, it's always a possibility. I suspect that in this case, because the subdivision does comply with the planning scheme, the applicant is most likely to say to us, well, it complies with the planning scheme. And again, perhaps we need to have some more discussion about battle axe lots, because there are a lot of battle axe lots around, and as I mentioned, there are 12 or 15 in Newlands Arm, and to be honest, no one really notices them. It is possible, if council wishes to defer the application in order to have further discussions with the applicant, that is possible, but I will again mention that the subdivision complies with the planning scheme. It provides lots of 2,000 square metres or greater. That's the minimum requirement in the zone, and we would be on difficult ground to argue that the lots should be larger or that battle axe allotments aren't suitable, because there's only 2 conjoined driveways on this subdivision, and to be honest, I think if this land was developed in accordance with this plan, we wouldn't even notice the battle axe driveways. However, that is a possibility, and council, it's up to council to make the decision.
Stuart,
yes. So if I might just add, should council be of a mind and determined to defer, it raises the real prospect, as we've seen previously, of the applicant taking it to VCAT on the basis of council's failure to make a decision within the timeframe, and that takes the matter out of council's hands and out of the capacity to make have any role in determining it or negotiating an outcome. So I'm not saying they would, but there's a realistic prospect that they may.
Thanks, Stuart. John.
Thanks, Arthur. Stuart, that was actually going to be my question, so thanks for your reply. I had that feeling that if we did defer, that it could be considered failure to make a decision, and it would be taken out of our hands. And as Martin's been saying consistently, this proposal, it ticks all the boxes according to the planning scheme. So I'm now sort of thinking that yes, we need to make a decision.
Yeah, all right. So we now have a motion and a resolution, recommendation, get it right. And we have a mover and a seconder in Mindy and Trevor. Is that correct? Or are you asking a question?
No, if there are no further questions, I'd like to move the recommendation, please,
Good.
Mr Deputy.
Thank you, Mindy. And Trevor's the seconder. Would you like to speak to the motion, please, Councillor Uri?
No, in my mind, this is, after all the discussion, and it's been great to have the questions and the discussion, but I'm quite comfortable that all the issues have been addressed and that this subdivision, which I do see as an acceptable transition subdivision, is quite okay to go ahead. I've been out to visit it, as I know a lot of other councillors have done, and I see no reason why it shouldn't go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Councillor Stowe.
Yes, just to endorse Mindy's remarks. She's quite right. They're good sized blocks. They meet the planning scheme requirements, the drainage, the sewerage, the traffic flows, everything seems in order, and I can see no reason to oppose it either.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Sonia, go ahead.
Look, I am very much pro-planning, and I do believe that, you know, we need to build more houses because we have housing shortages. In this particular instance, even though it does meet all the expectations of the planning department, and I commend that they've done work, their due diligence on this. I just, you know, after having looked at the property and all the surrounding dwellings, I don't believe that that it stays within the neighbourhood character. I think that the blocks should have been bigger. So I am going to speak against the motion.
Anyone else wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Reeves, the Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor and councillors. Look, it's been an interesting and vibrant discussion, and I really value the input of everybody. But on balance, I'm going to speak and vote in favour of the proposal. I think it is a transition block. I can see a third of the way down the block across the road. Residential, general residential zoned blocks, and neighbourhood character is an evolving feature of development, and I think that in a couple of years' time we won't even notice that there are houses along there. It'll be like the other roads, the other developments along Birrells Road. They'll just disappear into the bush and be unnoticed.
Councillor Gratian, you had your hand up, or?
Sorry, I want to speak against the motion.
Yeah,
thanks.
I thought you wanted to go. Yeah, you got the floor.
Oh, thank you. Look, I accept that it meets planning scheme requirements, except for that one issue around respecting neighbourhood character. But I do think it's setting a precedent that it worries me a great deal. That, you know, if we allow this one, why do you've said, we've heard that it's unlikely, council's unlikely to allow other blocks to be subdivided, but I don't understand the reasoning behind that at all, and I'm just very concerned that if this one is allowed to subdivide to the extent that is proposed, that everyone else will attempt to as well. So on that basis alone, I'm going to not object to it, vote against it. Thanks.
Good. Anyone else wish to speak for it? Against it? If not, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3. So the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. which gets us to urgent and other business, of which we have none. So at this point in time, we need to move into confidential or into in camera, and I would need a motion to do that, please. Councillor Stowe moves that we move into camera, and seconded by Councillor Crook. All those in favour of that motion? Right, thank you. So we'll now go in. We're right. Right, so that brings us to the end of the agenda, and all that's left to do is to thank everyone for their attendance and participation, and wish you